The United Nations has announced that 1.1 million Palestinians have lost their homes. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If these two cared about the Israeli and American hostages, he would not be blowing up Gaza and he would not be giving his support to do so. They said Egypt could help if they wanted to, so they set a date for Egypt to send aid to the Palestinians, and guess what they did today? They bombed the crossing. They told Palestinians to flee to the south while bombing the south. Just remember that we the people have the power when elections come up. When you're spending your hard-earned money on these celebs, just remember the faces of those who co-signed the genocide of Palestinians. And if you needed more evidence of Israelis being sick and tired of those in power and just want to live in peace with Palestinians, here it is.
I'm an Israeli. I was born in Israel. I even perceive myself as an Israeli patriot. I care about Israel. I belong to Israel. I'm attached to Israel. Don't speak about symmetry because there is no symmetry. I would even suggest that there is no conflict. Was there a French-Algerian conflict? There was a brutal French occupation in Algeria, which came to its end. And there is no Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There is a brutal Israeli occupation which must come to its end one way or the other. In our dark backyard, there is a regime which is today by far one of the most cruel, brutal tyrannies on earth, not less than this, and I know what I say because I covered it for 40 years. And this regime cannot be defined but as an apartheid. Two peoples live on one piece of land. One people has all the rights in the world, and I'm talking now only about the occupied territories. Two peoples share one piece of land there. One people has all the rights in the world. The other people has no rights whatsoever. It looks like apartheid. It talks like apartheid. It is apartheid. And nobody can contradict it. Nobody who has been there. Nobody who is fair enough to look, go to the Jordan Valley, see the prosperity in the settlements, and then go and see the Palestinians who live there without electricity, without water, without any rights. And then tell me if it's apartheid, or you might invent it another title. But when I steal your car, I'm not in a position to put conditions for returning the car. First of all, return the car. And the only way to return the car is now giving equal rights to the Palestinians.
If you still don't get it, the Israeli government is making it loud and clear. This is not about hostages or about Palestinian civilians. This is about land. I want you to hear what Israel's minister just said.
קודם כל, שני דברים עיקריים. אחד, אנחנו במלחמה מול איראן, שהצעד, המהלך הראשון, המהלך ההפתעה של החמאס, היה רק הצעד הראשון בה. עזה חייבת להיות יותר קטנה בסוף המלחמה. א', זה עניין ביטחוני.
להרחיב את הפרימטר.
נכון, גם במזרח וגם בצפון. והם צריכים לאבד את השטח הזה. אחד, זה ביטחונית. שתיים, מחיר הפסד שהערבים מבינים. הם חייבים לשלם מחיר הפסד. אצלם חיי אדם או נזק לרכוש זה הרבה פחות חשוב. את הדבר הזה הם מבינים. הם צריכים לשלם מחיר הפסד גם במובן הזה. ואנחנו חייבים שהסיום של המערכה יהיה ברור לכל המרחב שמסביבנו.
How many more times can they make it clear they don't care about Palestinians' lives?
What's the view on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza this morning?
There is no humanitarian crisis because...
There isn't?
There is no. Israel is in charge of the safety of the Israelis. Hamas is in charge of the safety of the Palestinians.
We've been showing pictures this morning that would illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
When spitting out BS doesn't work, so you try emotional manipulation.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you a mother?
Yes.
What would you think if your children would have been executed in front of your eyes? Would you expect your government to think about those Nazis committing those crimes and to say, wait a second, first of all, we need to protect the enemy, and then to protect my children. Your children come as priority to your prime minister.
So
do you know that?
We have been showing images this morning that illustrate that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
So blame Hamas and ask Hamas why they started those atrocities, walking around.
So you acknowledge that there is a humanitarian crisis?
I'm saying there is no. Israel is working.
So what do you think is happening?
Oh, there is no humanitarian crisis, but there is a humanitarian crisis because of Hamas. Can't be both. So which is it? If it hasn't been obvious enough, this is about taking more land. This is not about Hamas. This is not about the hostages. Think for a second, if they really cared about hostages and that was their goal, why are they dropping bombs in Gaza? Aren't you scared that you might actually kill the hostages? And if you think for a second that the Israeli people as a whole are happy about what's happening, that's not true. There is a brave Israeli survivor who is speaking out saying she does not want Palestinian civilians to be killed.
איך אני אמורה לקום בבוקר ולדעת ש4.5 קילומטרים מקיבוץ בארי בעזה יש אנשים שזה לא נגמר בשבילם. בשבילי זה נגמר אחרי 12 שעות, כי היה לאן להוציא אותי. אני בים המלח. מי שמדבר על נקמה, תתביישו. יש הרבה כאב, זה נכון. אני, אחרי כל מה שעברתי, כל כך הרבה כוחות אני מאבדת בכל פעם שאני שומעת את המילה נקמה. מה שאני עברתי, שאנשים יעברו את זה ולא יהיה מי שיוציא אותם. אי אפשר ככה, ולא, אי אפשר עוד פלסטרים. שואלים אותנו כל הזמן, אתם חושבים שתחזרו לקיבוץ אחרי זה? אתם חושבים שתחזרו לגור שם? בלי עוד הגנה, בלי עוד חיילים, בלי עוד זה? אל תגידו לי חיילים, אל תגידו לי הגנה, תגידו לי פתרון מדיני. כבר שנים אנחנו מבקשים פתרון מדיני.
So this is what parts of Palestinian-controlled Gaza look like after Israel's unrelenting bombing campaign that's been taking place over the past few days. Countless civilians and children have been hit as Israel is now blasting civilian areas while claiming that they're only targeting Hamas. But there are countless reports to the contrary. Here's a UN relief warehouse filled with humanitarian aid that was destroyed with Israeli missiles. The United Nations also says that 11 of their teachers and 30 of their students passed away. These were people participating in UN-funded schools in Gaza. So to call this a humanitarian intervention at this point would just be completely absurd. The Palestinian people are trapped in an open-air prison in one of the most densely populated places anywhere on Earth because it's the last place to go after Israel has seized and occupied the remainder of their land. So just indiscriminately firing missiles at the people trapped here is a horrendous war crime. It's against any kind of international and humanitarian law. But it's allowed to continue because it's being backed by the most powerful government and institutions on Earth. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said those calling for peace are disgraceful and repugnant. Personally, I think this is disgraceful and repugnant.
I've often said, Mr. President, if there were not an Israel, we'd have to invent one.
Why must the U.S. invent an Israel?
Israel is our oldest partner, and it has served a purpose for it. It's almost like an aircraft carrier in the Mideast for us.
Israel is an aircraft carrier for us. God, I love it when they just say the quiet part out loud. Yeah, shared principles, values, and ideas and everything, but they got the good real estate right next to where all the oil is. I mean, the U.S. doesn't give Israel $3 billion a year for nothing. Try not to be fooled by this only democracy in the Middle East kind of crap. Because history has shown us time and time again the U.S. could give two shits about democracy if it means getting what they want. In 1961, the U.S. helped assassinate the first democratically elected prime minister of the Congo because he would not go along with the West's colonial and corporate agenda. And that's just one out of dozens and dozens of examples. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Ronald Reagan put it neatly when he said, with a combat-experienced military, Israel is a force in the Middle East that is a benefit to us. If there were not an Israel with that force, we'd have to supply our own, so this isn't just altruism on our part. When you boil it down, that is the truth. Everything else, especially the moral posturing, is a ploy to manufacture consent for war and maybe even straight up genocide.